So President Biden's State of the Union address is tonight. It'll be, by the way, aired live here starting at 8 p.m.
Yes, that's right. And then we'll be taking
And
your phone calls all day tomorrow morning. Well, not all day, but tomorrow to see if you watched it and what you learned or didn't learn from it.
Well, he's going to have to address the matter at the border. He's going to address it in a meaningful way. He'll, of course, make the call for these intransigent House Republicans to support this bipartisan legislation that was crafted by Schumer and McConnell / Langford. And can't we just work together? I'll come to you, you come to me, let's do this for America, and so on and so forth. But against that backdrop, he's going to have a problem, which I assume will be included in the Republican response and the back and forth subsequent to the speech, which is the efforts that have been made by House Republicans, not just H.R. 2, but as House Speaker Mike Johnson outlined yesterday, the Laken Riley Act that is being advanced in the House. And what, other than the overture for bipartisanship, which is sort of a conceding the underlying advance of people coming into this country illegally, just at a slower pace, what else is he going to have to say? Will he do something that maybe is unanticipated and would be upsetting to his base, which is to announce executive orders along the lines of what is contained in the Laken Riley Act?
Well, it's so important because we got to ensure that this can't happen again. Republicans will not stand for the release of dangerous criminals into our communities, and that's exactly what the Biden administration has done. Laken is just one of the tragic examples of innocent American citizens who have lost their lives, been brutally and violently attacked by illegal criminals who are roaming our streets because they've allowed them in. So the Laken Riley Act, what it will do is ensure that ICE has to arrest and detain criminals who are aliens in the country, and that we'll deport them back to where they came from. And we're also going to allow the states to sue the federal government for its refusal to enforce federal law. We're doing everything we can as House Republicans.
Well, if the action in the Senate is any indication, probably don't expect to hear anything particularly new from President Biden, considering Dick Durbin, one of Pagliacci's sentinels in the Senate, killed an opportunity to have a floor vote on the Sarah Root law, sponsored by Iowa Senator Joni Ernst, which would do something very similar to what the Laken Riley Act would do, that is pending in the House. For more on all this, we're pleased to be joined by Nicole McCaw. She is the producer and creator of the documentary Border Wars, which is available at salemnow.com, the film Border Wars. Nicole, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Good morning, Dan and Amy. Thank you so much for having me on.
So give us sort of your angle of incidents on all things border security and immigration related as presented in your film.
When we went to the border 2 years ago, we wanted to see, are there kids in cages? Are there women and children being brought into sex trafficking? Is there fentanyl at the border? And right as we started our journey, I'm from inner city Detroit. My nephew actually overdosed 3 times on fentanyl within 48 hours.
Sorry.
And what's unique about this fentanyl is that 40% of it coming across the border is actually lethal. We are losing 400 Americans a day to a one-time use of fentanyl. The age is between 18 and 23. That is our future, my friend. That's our future. And that's what we're facing here at the border. Now, a lot of the times we see these activists where they're saying climate change, let's take care of the environment, stop the petroleum. They're, throwing paint on priceless art. Yet they're not at the border looking at the women and children, 50 to 80% who are getting raped coming in. That's the truth we are facing. We are facing murders in our community by these illegals. Look what happened in the state of Georgia to that university student. I mean, there's so many examples that we can see with the open border, and the people in power, every single one of them, with just their signature, can veto and close this border. They can veto anything that comes across their desk that doesn't have to do with closing the border, and they're choosing not to.
And so in your film, though, the focus on this seems to be on the human cost, maybe on both sides of the border, and because I understand that you interview victims of this trafficking and lawlessness at the border.
Absolutely. So we feature some victims in our film. They were brave enough to come forward and share their story as a part of their healing journey. And what I wanted to feature is this girl was from Action Park, New Jersey. She was held in a basement in Long Island for 3 years. And here's the kicker. She met her handler online, and she was groomed online by someone that was out of the country, who came into the country illegally, ended up meeting up with her and then taking her and selling her 30, 40 times a night to construction workers out of the basement in Long Island.
Did she ever, I mean, how did she get rescued?
Her story is in there, and in the end, she ended up in Arizona on a campus following a girl who had a golden retriever from a 7-Eleven and followed her back to the campus. She saw a professor and just let it all out because she was only 17 years old.
Wow.
And she told the campus professor. They ended up helping her, getting her rescued. And then right now she's in law school, becoming an attorney in the state of New York.
That's a great story. So this 2-year journey, where did you go? Because you must have been in some dangerous places.
We went from places like Tijuana, California. We went all the way over to the famous place for Eagles Pass, Hidalgo, Roma. We went to the Verde. We went to McAllen, the kidnapping capital of the country. Did you guys know that?
I did not know that. So what's going on in McAllen, Texas?
Right now, they have the highest cases of missing persons in the country on record for the past decade from kidnapping.
And you mentioned too that 2 years ago you wanted to see the much ballyhooed kids in cages and so forth. So your interaction with Customs and Border Protection and what the situation was for the migrants and how they were treated by American law enforcement, that part of it as well?
It was. And actually, when we were speaking to the NGOs, it was interesting when we were filming, they were all happy to show us and everything was all right and we brought toys and food. But as soon as we stopped rolling, a lot of the employees, the volunteers, came up to us and they were talking with us and showing us how the children were marked on their teeth before they even come into the country. So that way they're belonging to certain cartels. Not only do they have their wristbands to identify them, but now they're marking their teeth. And one night, we detained 100 illegals. 48 were men. The rest were children, zip-tied and sedated on Zoloft. And when we called 911 and the ambulance came, they said, yeah, you guys, they're probably on Zoloft. Look around and you'll find the packets. Well, we found a bunch of Zoloft packets. Now, I'm a mother of a 13-year-old child. Yes, being a parent is aggravating sometimes, but I never drugged him. So clearly, these were not their fathers. And when we asked them, where's the mother? We're getting a divorce. All 48 men at the border at 3:32 a.m.
So their parents they're just unaccompanied minors that were kidnapped or sold to these men to take into the country, because I guess you're treated differently if you're here illegally with a child rather than by yourself.
Absolutely. So what I found going to the border and actually walking on the other side and talking to families, a lot of the families, women actually, with no husbands and the children were taken. They said a lot of the times what happens is the cartels come, they recruit the husbands, they leave, they come into the United States, and the cartels come back for their kids. And not so they can be joined as a family, so they can work for the gangs or sold into sex trafficking. And here's the reality that we face. $22 million a day is what Texas is making in child sex trafficking. Just one state alone. This is a day.
What do you mean? What do you mean Texas is making?
So what I mean by that, the cartels in the state of Texas are making $22 million a day off of sex trafficking. That's what I meant to say.
Yeah. So right. I mean, it's such a ghoulish business. People don't even want to confront it. I suspect they don't want to think about these horrific things. But this is what Tom Homan, the former acting ICE director under Trump, says all the time, that border security is the most humane policy, because this is the lawlessness just animates these ghoulish businesses, the fentanyl business, the drug trafficking that you're talking about, and the human trafficking, including minors. I mean, so all of these sort of Horatio Alger stories that are pumped by the open borders crowd. This is the seedy underbelly that they don't want to discuss, that they don't want to talk about, that they don't want to see documented, because this is the reality.
Absolutely. And what I found interesting about the history with the border wall, right? You know, we were told, oh, there's a big wall, people are getting hurt, they can't come in. Well, when I went there, majority of it is rusting. And it's open. I mean, we went to 2,000 miles, and it's just open like a Walmart parking lot. There's nothing there. And then we went to the pieces of the wall, and there's sections, and you'll see in the film that we have an open section. And this bus from Mexico drives through and stops in the middle of nowhere, and like 80 people get off the bus. And then the bus just drives back to Mexico. No problem, just drop off the load.
That's just another stop, right? It's it's just a bus stop. That's the border's a bus stop.
Do they fly them in secretly or put them on a bus and just drive? Right.
Yeah, right.
And, you know, something else that we anticipated. This is something interesting. You know, we were told, oh, we're not flying them in the middle of the night. We're not flying them. No way, no way. Well, one of the gentlemen, Baz, who's a former CIA operative, former Marines, military, special forces, he ran out in Tennessee and for us and got the footage, which is in the film, and Spirit Airlines and American Airlines are flying these illegals. And then when you speak to the drivers, when they pull up in the Lyft and the Ubers to take these individuals off of the airplane, they ask them, do you know where you're taking them? Have you vetted these families? No, we just got an address and I got a paycheck. $1,500 to drive them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, well, now we know, thanks to the Center for Immigration Services FOIA lawsuit, 320,000 migrants have been flown in to 43 airports financed by our government. They won't tell us anymore. We see James O'Keefe at this Ramada Inn hotel in San Diego that's fenced off. There's a black tarp on the fence so that you can't see what's going on. I mean, all these things that are done surreptitiously too. The involvement of the NGOs like Catholic Charities. These things that are done surreptitiously. I mean, if this is so humane, if this is so positive, if this is so laudable, this approach to border security and immigration policy, then you would think people would want to do it in the light of day, would be happy to do it in the most transparent fashion possible. Doesn't it generate appropriate skepticism when everything is done in such an opaque fashion?
Absolutely. I completely agree with you. We are World War champions back to back. Why are we allowing these crimes against humanity to happen to women, to children, to their families? This is something that blows my mind. Right now, the Center of Immigration, Todd Benson, he's featured in the film. He's a 20-year agent, special border analysis, as well as he's worked under a couple different presidents for immigration policies. And what's interesting is he told me when he was in Juarez, he walked up to a guy who has a tent mansion. He's a foot smuggler. And he asked him, what contributes to your success? And he said, invitation in Spanish. So when they finished the interview, he said it was Joe Biden when he went on the stage and debated Trump and said, who wants open borders? And Joe Biden raised his hand. He said, that's an invitation to all of us foot smugglers. You will be rich. Well,
yeah, right. Decriminalizing border crossings, which every Democrat candidate for president, except for Colorado Senator Michael Bennet, raised their hand and said, I'm for decriminalization of border crossings. That message gets out the world over. Of course. I mean, that was such a moment, and it's so underappreciated. I'm glad you mentioned that. Nicole McCaw is the producer and creator of the documentary Border Wars. Again, it's called Border Wars, and it's available at salemnow.com. Nicole, thanks so much for joining us. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Dan and Amy. Take care.
Thank you. God bless. And she joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
You're listening to Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan Proft and Amy Jacobson on AM 560. The Answer.
The IRS is the most powerful collection agency on earth, and if you owe back taxes, the news isn't good. The IRS is raising the interest rate it charges on unpaid taxes, and further rate hikes are expected. Most people don't know it, but the IRS adds interest charges to your tax debts daily. So if you owe the IRS today, you'll owe even more tomorrow. And it doesn't stop until you get right with the IRS. The good news is getting right can start with one phone call to Optima Tax Relief, America's #1 tax